Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another episode of my Shock to the Past series. For those of you who don't know what this series consists of, it's basically movies from the 60s, 70s and 80s that shocked audiences back then and how they shape up by today's standards. So today we're going to be looking at the most notorious movie ever made, or at least one of the most notorious movies ever made. A lot of people have this as their #1 film on their most disturbing list, and so it has a lot of notoriety because there was a lot behind the scenes that happened that actually made the film even more eerie. So it's an Italian movie, Italian language, released in the year 1975, directed by the fascinating and damaged Pier Paolo Pasolini, and this is the infamous Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom. And so this is a film set during World War II. 4 elderly fascist Italians, they kidnap some adolescents, they take them to a rural mansion and they subject them to sexual violence, degradation, humiliation for 120 days. So that's basically it, and what's in store for these victims is definitely something that you're going to have to check out for yourself. And so as I said, this is a very, very notorious movie, a very extreme film, and the fact that it was on so many people's disturbing list shows how much power this film has. And so for that reason, I was kind of shunning this film quite considerably, is because you really have to be in the right mindset. I saw some trailers, I saw some people's reviews, and the way they talk about this movie, it's definitely a film that you can't watch if you're depressed, if you're not feeling good, or if things aren't going well for you. Then this is a movie that's going to make you feel even worse. And so I had to be in the right mindset, and I finally was. And I thought to myself, I can't have a Shock to the Past series that talks about shocking movies without having probably the most shocking movie ever made. So I gave this movie a shot, and I will say it is incredibly fascinating. I wouldn't say it's a good film at all, but I will say that it's an insight into a very damaged man that was Pier Paolo Pasolini. Now, what makes this movie even eerier was that he actually died shortly after the release, and there are conspiracy theories floating around that he was killed by the Italian government because of this film itself. Now, I don't know whether it's true. I'm not making out that that's what happened, but the fact that there are conspiracy theories floating around about this, it makes the film even eerier. It makes the film almost feel evil. And that was the same with The Exorcist. There was a lot of theories happening surrounding The Exorcist and what happened during film production and after the production, and so it gives that movie even more notoriety. And so Salo is one of those films. But pushing the behind the scenes aside, taking a look at the film, I felt as though this was an expression of frustration from this director. Now, this director is said to have been quite, damaged, quite troubled, and I believe that the troubles and the frustration that he had was actually coming through the screen. And the reason why I say that is because the film doesn't really have any structure. The movie doesn't really have any story. It's just almost 120 minutes of torture and sexual violence and degradation, humiliation, and just utter cruelty. And the movie, I felt, it was just trying to outdo each scene. So one scene of shocking material, and then the next scene was trying desperately to outshock that previous scene. And so it was like sticking the middle finger up at society and saying, this is a movie I'm going to make as many people upset as possible, and I'm not going to really feel sorry for it. And so Pier Paolo Pasolini, if you see interviews with him, he is very, very interesting, and there's no doubt he can direct films. Is that his other movies have been very interesting, but in this movie, I just believe that yes, it is very extreme, yes, it is very cruel, but it's a personal kind of touch. I'm not saying that he was into this degradation or anything like that, but I believe that it felt to me as though he was an angry man, and that angriness is shown through the screen from what was actually happening. It is a very, very shocking film. It's a very, very upsetting film. Even by today's standards, it would still have an R18 rating. It's because, yes, it's 1975, but it definitely hasn't lost any of its shock value. And this is a film that will make you feel repulsed. I actually felt physically sick. And so that was something that I can appreciate on an extreme level, and a director who's not afraid to actually show things for what they are. But to me, I just felt it's more fascinating on the director level, on the personal level as far as this director was concerned, is because was he actually venting that frustration? I could be completely wrong. Maybe it was just him just making a film that he believed was art, or he believed that was a commentary on fascism. But for me, I just thought it was a little bit more personal than that. I thought as though this is a way that he could vent his frustration at the world, is that he was homosexual, and back then, especially in the 70s, homosexuality had a lot of stigma behind it. It still has stigma, but more so in the older days. And so for that, I thought as though there are a lot of sexual sort of violence in this film, and I just thought as though some of the scenes that happened, it was like sticking the middle finger up at that stigma, at those people who were, criticising his work. And so this is a way for him to say, no, I'm going to do what I do. I'm basically proud of who I am, and I'm not going to make any apologies for that. And so the people that he believed were against him, he was actually fighting back, and he was expressing that through what you actually see in this film. So it's not a good film. It's not very well structured. Now, I'm sorry for saying that, because a lot of people like this movie, but for me, it was just, I felt as though it was extreme for the sake of being extreme. And he is a very, very good director, so I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe there's a little bit more behind that. Maybe it was, as I said, a little bit more personal than his other films. And so I'm not saying he was a sicko or anything like that, but as I said, frustration against a society that had a lot of stigma against him. And so it was like he's saying, okay, I'm going to make something that's going to make you really upset. And that is kind of allowing me to vent that frustration through the screen and actually what is actually happening from the first minute to the last minute. And so it's basically a shock fest, and it's going to upset basically 95% of film viewers, is that it's a very hard movie to watch. I'm not going to watch this again, just because you don't need to, because I'll never forget what I actually saw. And so it is extreme. It definitely belongs on this list as far as the episodes are concerned. But it's a movie that I cannot recommend in good conscience. It's, as I said, it's not a very good film. It's basically one scene after the other of just evil against humanity, cruelty and utter despair. So be very careful of that. But as I said, on the other side, I think it's a fascinating look into the damaged mind that was Pier Paolo Pasolini. So definitely a film I can't recommend. But if you think you're brave enough, then give it a shot and let me know what you thought. So yeah, that is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next episode, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.